The rain that night did not fall gently. It crashed down like the city itself was breaking apart, soaking streets, drowning streetlights, and washing away the last bit of warmth from an already cold evening. Under a flickering restaurant awning, a tired man stood watching the storm with hollow eyes, his apron still tied, his shoes worn thin, his hands trembling not from the cold but from exhaustion. He was a single father, a waiter who counted coins before every bus ride, a man whose entire world fit into the small hand of his young daughter waiting for him at home. He did not know it yet, but a single choice he was about to make in that rain would change his life forever. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of good deeds that often go unnoticed, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that even the smallest acts can ripple into something extraordinary. Every evening followed the same rhythm for him. He worked double shifts at a modest roadside restaurant, serving plates to people who rarely noticed his face. Tips were unpredictable, smiles even rarer. His wife had passed away years ago, leaving him with grief he never fully healed from, and a daughter he loved more than his own life. She was his reason for waking up before sunrise and returning home long after midnight. Her school fees, her food, her worn shoes, her quiet laughter in their tiny apartment were what kept him going when his body begged him to stop. That night, the rain began just as his shift ended. The streets emptied quickly, cars splashing water like waves, neon lights blurring into reflections on the road. He pulled his thin jacket tighter and stepped out, already calculating whether he could afford a taxi or if he would have to walk halfway to save money. That was when he noticed her. She was standing alone near the curb, soaked, shaking, her hair plastered. To her face, her eyes wide with panic, she looked young, far too young to be stranded in a storm like that. Her heels were broken, her dress torn slightly at the hem, and her phone lay lifeless in her hand. Something about the way she stood there, frozen, helpless, stirred a deep ache inside him. He thought of his daughter, imagined her years later in a similar moment, and without thinking of the cost, he stepped toward the rain. He offered her his jacket, ignoring how the cold bit into his own skin the moment he slipped it off. He guided her under the awning, shielding her from the worst of the storm. He flagged down a cab that had sped past countless others and used nearly all the cash he had earned that day to make sure she got home safely. He did not ask her name. He did not expect gratitude. He simply watched the cab disappear into the rain, then turned and began the long walk home, soaked, shivering, and strangely lighter inside. When he reached his apartment, his daughter was already asleep on the small couch they shared as a bed. He gently wiped the rain from his hair, covered her with a thin blanket, and sat on the floor beside her. His body ached, his pockets were nearly empty, but his heart felt full in a way it hadn't in years. He whispered a quiet prayer that the young woman would be safe, and then allowed sleep to claim him. Days passed, and life returned to its usual struggle. The restaurant remained busy, customers remained indifferent, and bills continued to pile up. The rainstorm became just another memory, another quiet sacrifice no one would ever know about, or so he thought. One evening, after another long shift, he sat beside his daughter as she watched television, her favorite routine before bed. The screen glowed softly in the dim room, filling the space with familiar sounds. He barely paid attention, his mind drifting to the next rent payment, the groceries he needed to buy, the extra hours he might pick up. Suddenly his daughter sat up. Straight. Her small fingers pointed at the screen, her eyes wide with excitement and confusion. She said that the woman on TV looked familiar, like someone she had seen before. He turned his head, barely interested at first, until his breath caught in his throat. On the screen was the young woman from the rain. She was dry, radiant, sitting under bright studio lights, her face known, admired, celebrated. The television host spoke about her as a rising star, a public figure whose life had recently been saved by a stranger during a violent storm. Images flashed of flooded streets, headlines praising an unnamed hero, a man who had given his jacket and his last money to help her get home safely. His heart pounded as realization washed over him. The world was talking about the moment he had already buried in his memory. His daughter looked at him, her eyes searching his face, slowly understanding. She recognized the jacket. She remembered him coming home soaked that night. In her innocent way, she realized that her father was the man everyone was praising, even if no one knew his name. The woman on TV spoke about how that night had changed her perspective on life. She had been at the lowest moment of her own struggles, overwhelmed by pressure, fear, and loneliness, when a stranger had appeared without hesitation. She described his tired eyes, his gentle presence, and how his kindness reminded her that the world was not as cruel as it sometimes felt. She said she had spent days trying to find him, hoping to thank him, hoping to help him the way he had helped her. Tears filled the single father's eyes as he listened, not because of the recognition, but because for the first time in years, he felt seen. His daughter hugged him tightly, pride shining on her face. In that small room, with peeling paint and secondhand furniture, he felt like the richest man alive. The story did not end there. Viewers across the city began searching for the mysterious waiter. The restaurant owner recognized the description and came forward. News cameras arrived. For the first time, the man who had spent his life blending into the background was standing in the light, uncomfortable but grateful. The young woman eventually found him. She thanked him publicly, but more importantly, she thanked him privately, with sincerity that needed no cameras. She offered support, opportunities, and help, not as charity but as respect. She insisted on helping him secure a better future for his daughter, ensuring her education, stability, and dreams would not be limited by hardship. Life did not magically become perfect. He still worked hard. He still valued humility. But doors that had always been closed slowly began to open. He found a better job, a steadier income, and something he had not felt in a long time: hope. Years later, his daughter would remember that rainy night as the moment she truly understood what kind of man her father was. Not a hero because he was on television, but because he chose kindness when no one was watching, because he gave when he had nothing to spare, because he taught her, without words, that goodness is never wasted, even if it takes time to return. As the story came full circle, the man often thought about how close he had been to walking away that night, to choosing comfort over compassion. He realized that sometimes life tests us quietly, in moments so ordinary we barely notice them. And those moments shape everything. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of empathy and humanity, please take a moment to like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep meaningful stories like this alive. Before this video ends, leave a comment below sharing what this story made you feel, or a moment when kindness changed your life. Your words might inspire someone who needs hope today. Because in a world often filled with storms, it is the quiet kindness of ordinary people that becomes the light others recognize, even years later, shining on a screen, reminding us that doing good is never forgotten.